I'm Matthias Andersson, and I am joined today by Joe Lowery. We'll meet him in just a minute, but I want to first talk about you. If you are here to learn about being a professional cloud architect, then you're in the right place. And today we're going to be talking about Google's Professional Cloud Architect exam. But to be honest, a lot of the stuff that gets covered in this exam is applicable generally as well. But also, regardless of where you are in your learning journey of professional cloud architect, you can still get some value here today, I believe. We're going to be taking a look at some of the exam questions and how you can break those down and how they apply to being a professional cloud architect. And in particular, those exam questions come from Joe Lowery's new Professional Cloud Architect course that is available on A Cloud Guru. So let's meet Joe. Joe, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. Matthias, thanks very much for the introduction. As Matthias said, I'm Joe Lowery. I'm a training architect with A Cloud Guru, and I specialize in Google Cloud. Uh, I currently am living in kind of chilly upstate New York. We've got a vicious wind chill factor going on, but I'm safe and cozy here in my little studio. And a little bit about me. I've been in technology and technology training for a really long time. I've written over 35 books, mostly on the web, and been working in Google Cloud in some capacity for about 8 years now. Uh, Fun fact, in a previous life, I used to perform on stage with a personal computer. And that is how I got involved in the technology world. I taught myself to code in order to do my own presentations and never to look back. Well, I looked back a bunch of times, but you know what I mean.
But always moving forward, and that's the way to do it, right? So
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
awesome. I've seen in the chat already that there are a number of people joining us from Iowa and England and some other places, UK. Um, uh, anyway, yeah, I think a couple of people there. So let us know where you're joining us from. Myself, I'm from the west coast of Canada, British Columbia. And Joe, you are in New York, yeah?
I am. As I say, it's upstate New York in a small town called Catskill, which is not in the Catskill Mountains, but we look at it. You drive up to my town and you see this odd little statue of Rip Van Winkle. For some reason, the town has decided to embrace Rip Van Winkle as their mascot. And, the idea of going to sleep for 20 years and then after drinking a lot and waking up and seeing how things have changed, well, that really speaks to our technology today because I feel like that pretty much every day. I wake up and it's like, oh my gosh, this whole new thing has happened again. Uh, that was a bit of a
Yeah.
stretch, but you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah, it's all good. No, but there's always a lot of stuff changing. I see that we've got people joining us also from Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Sydney, Chile. Chile, I remember there was a new GCP region announced for Chile. And it might even have come online now, I think. So anyway, there is a lot of interesting stuff. So let's jump into what we're going to be covering today. But just as a bit of context before we start, we've got a little bit of so context not only for the stream, but also context for this certification. So one of the key questions that people ask us pretty frequently is like, how does this certification fit in with the rest of the certifications? And so, Joe, do you want to walk us through that a little bit, if you don't mind?
Yeah, no, I'd be really happy to. So this is, as Mattia said, one of many certifications that are available in Google Cloud. In fact, there's so many of them, you actually need a guide to help you go all the way through them. And as it just so happens, we have a guide to help you go all the way through them. And this was one that Matthias developed. It's available on YouTube at that link that you can see there. I believe we'll put it in the chat. And within that guide is one section that really speaks to where we are today. And I'm just going to grab it and hone in on it a little bit. Here you see all the various learning paths and how we recommend that you attack them depending on the role that you want to go for. At the very top of the list is the cloud architect role. And let me zoom in on that so you can see it a little bit more clearer. So here we have the very first certification that we recommend that you go for. And if you're looking to fulfill the cloud architect role, is a relatively new cert called Cloud Digital Leader. In fact, I think it is the newest of Google certifications. They may have
Hmm.
revamped some of their previous ones, but this is um, brand new as of last year. And it is Google's only foundational certification. Um, as a matter of fact, I happen to be working on this course, a course for this exam at this very moment. Well, not at this very moment, but the moments before I was here and the moments after I leave here. Um,
Not
and
that kind of
that will be
multitasking, huh?
indeed, indeed. Well, if something comes to me. Um, and that will be coming out later this year in, I think I can actually say Q2. Yes, I can say that. Um,
Hmm.
and so it is uh, the certification itself is really highly recommended, I think, because what it does is it kind of gives you this broad foundation in where Google is and their worldview, if you will, how they think what everything that is changing and what they term a digital transformation is going on and how you should address that. And it's good for just to give you an overview of Google. If those of you who are in the audience might be just checking Google out as an idea, there's some really interesting information there. And then from there, we go to the Associate Cloud Engineer certification, which is an absolute must-have. Uh, I have it as a prerequisite for my course on professional cloud architect. But here you do get a wide breadth of the Google Cloud services. And I have a cue the trumpets. I have a special announcement to make. We just released a new course for the Associate Cloud Engineer. Just went live over the weekend, and it is was done by our own Broadus Palmer, and I highly recommend it. So if you are looking to get that cert under your belt, check out Broadus's new course. And next, we have an optional course for the professional cloud DevOps engineer. This is something you might want to consider if you either are on one side of the scale or the other. If you have some experience in this area, or alternatively, if you're not familiar with it at all and you feel you really need to bolster that knowledge, because you will need it going into a professional cloud architect. And PCA, short for a professional cloud architect, it's a key certification, I think, because it's one of the most overarching of all of the Google certs. Not only do you need to know about all the various services, but you also need to understand the business side of architecting cloud solutions as well. And my PCA course was pushed live a little bit earlier this year, so it's pretty up to date. It's based on the latest version of the PCA exam, and um, I'm looking forward to getting your feedback on it as you go through it.
Yeah, I've actually started going through your course, and this might be something that people might be a little surprised at that we go through sometimes our own courses and each other's courses because there's a lot of value to be had, and I'm enjoying it already. I've got to take a look at my recertification eventually here. So, but
Great.
yeah, it's definitely something I'd recommend. Actually, both of those courses I think you should check out. They're really up to date, and there's both of the training architects are awesome. So definitely check those out. And I think we'll get some links in the chats as well. I guess if we see that the certifications are a valuable sort of set of tools that you can use to further your own learning journey. Working through those certifications in that order really helps you move in the right direction. And some people think, oh, well, do I need to get those other ones? Well, no, you don't need to get it in the sense that they won't let you sit the exam. You can sit any of the exams. There aren't any hard prerequisites. The reason we suggest this so strongly is because you benefit from going through them. And you can learn the stuff much more effectively if you go through them in this way. We definitely recommend that you use them as those stepping stones. If they're already stuff that you mostly know, then they're actually not very slow. You go through them pretty quickly. And if there's something that takes more time for you, then that's an indication that there was more learning value that you needed to go through as a foundation. So definitely a good recommendation. Thanks, Joe. So the next question that before I forget, I want to say that we are totally willing to answer questions as we go along, not just at the end. So feel free to start asking questions in the chat. I see one question of will this be recorded? And yes, it will. It should be available still at the same link on YouTube, that sort of stuff, and on our platform later. So but go ahead and keep asking more questions. Oh, and we've also got some love for you, Joe. Love Joseph's jokes and historic laugh. So excellent. Happy Soul from Atlanta was saying that. So and some people happy about the new courses. One quick question: is Anthos included in the latest exam? Is one of the questions. And I think the answer is yes. There is some Anthos, both in the PCA and the ACE exam. Definitely take a look at that. And in particular, though, both of these two courses have been built to make sure that you have all of the information that you need so that you can go and sit the exam with confidence. And also, exam questions are things that we value. So Joe has written a whole bunch of professional cloud architect exam questions, and that's what we're going to keep going through for the rest of this stream here. But before we jump into the first one, I want to give my sort of approach for how you can work through exam questions, because a really frequent question is not just like how do I pass the exam or what do I need to know, but how do I actually work through exam questions? How can I be successful at breaking down those questions and figuring out what answer they're expecting from me? As we'll go through this, you'll see that there's actually a lot of parallel to doing this in the real world, like you might around a boardroom table discussing the ideas that your team members have or whatever. So we're going to jump into the actual outline. So my structured breakdown process starts with understanding. You really need to understand what's going on in the question. If you don't understand what some of the terms are, you can't go any further than that. You're really blocked. So you need to understand what are all the terms about, what is the actual key question that they're asking, and that's something we sometimes call the kicker or the stem or the thing at the very bottom. It's like, how would you do this in a cost-effective way, or how would you solve the problem that they're facing? And that keys into okay, so now I have to understand that the response options have to answer that particular question. And when you read or reread the rest of the scenario, you have an understanding of what it is that you're trying to figure out. So the next step is to eliminate. So you have an understanding of the scenario, the key question, and the options, and all the things that are happening in the options. Which ones can you throw away? It says something like, how would you fix the problem? And one of the response options is go swim with dolphins. Well, that's not actually going to solve the problem. I don't expect that's going to be one of the options on the exam, but if you do see it, you should eliminate it. But you should also eliminate other options that are wrong, something wrong with them that precludes them from being a valid option or not answering the question that's being asked. After you've eliminated, then you move on to evaluating. You have to figure out which of these options is better. Is it better to do it this way or this other way? Sometimes there's a question of speed or efficiency or cost or security or just something that you've picked up from the scenario that they care about such and such. So then you evaluate which is the better, and then you pick exactly the right number of options. You choose the response options. Often it'll be just one, but sometimes it'll be choose two of five or something like that. It, you have to pick the right number of options, and generally the exam software will force you to pick the right number, but that's one of the things to be aware of, is that you do need to get all of those responses picked correctly if you want to get marks for that question. And then finally, people often forget it. They pick something and then they move on, but you should always just double check your answers. Make sure that this actually does solve the question that's being asked. make sure that it is valid, make sure that you're not missing something, because you're not going to have the same clarity on it when you come back to this question at the end. And speaking of coming back to the question at the end, you want to, over the entire course of the exam, answer all of the questions that you're given and have a little bit of time left over so that you can go back to the ones that you might have flagged as you were going through them. You said, oh, well, I'm not entirely sure about this one. You flag it, you can come back to it later. Um, but if you don't go through them quickly enough, then you can't go back to them at the end because you won't have enough time. And so that is why, and this is where we're going with all of this is why we give 2 minutes per question as sort of this box of time that you should be able to break down a question, understand all the stuff, eliminate options, evaluate them, choose them, validate, and then move on to the next one. 2 minutes for that. If you practice over and over again, you get better at that. And that's why we're going to go through exactly that today. So I think we should,
Before you before you continue,
yeah,
let me just say, Matthias, I really appreciate this. I think this is really a great template that people can follow along in their process, and it makes a lot of sense. Um, as I was looking at it, I was going like, understand, eliminate, evaluate, choose, validate. This doesn't really roll off the tongue, you know. So I came up with a mnemonic to
oh,
help
let's
people
hear it.
understand this. So I worked on this. I actually did come up with something. So we're
Oh,
looking
nice.
at U-E-E-C-V. Okay, so go with me here.
Uh-huh.
Uncle Edgar eats corn vivaciously. Uncle Edgar eats corn vivaciously. So
Wow.
just put that in your head, and I'm sure understand, eliminate, evaluate, choose, validate will just come streaming back. Keep
Now that
Uncle
is
Edgar
core
in mind.
value from coming to this live stream. You heard it here first.
That's absolutely
Uncle
right.
Edgar eats corn vivaciously is Joe's mnemonic for you to use. Remember that,
And,
and you will succeed in life. I'm
and
sure
it's
that's
astounding that you actually remembered it. So there we go. A proof
I
that it
did.
works.
Wonderful. All right. Yeah. So let's just jump into the questions now. When you get the question, we're not going to be walking you through it. You have 2 minutes. We want you to actually work through this problem. We want you to figure out what the response is and put your answers into the chat. I'll give you a couple of time markers as we're going here, but we want to make sure that you know how to commit to something. So I'm going to say that we can start the timer on the first question whenever Joe's got a chance here.
I'm
And
ready. All
then,
right.
all right, let's go.
Let's
Two
go.
minutes starts now. 30 seconds gone, so you should hopefully have understood most of the stuff going on. All right, we're a minute through, so maybe you've eliminated, maybe you're even sort of settling on something, depending on how quickly you're getting through these. But definitely try to be moving through it. All right, we have 30 seconds left, so hopefully you're settling on an answer. If you're not sure, kind of guess. It's okay to guess if you're not sure and see how you would have done. You should definitely put in an answer regardless of whether you're sure. All right, 5 seconds. Something, anything, quick, quick, quick. All right, time is up. So We have seen some answers come in. We've seen some C's, mostly on YouTube. We've seen some D's. Let's walk through this question.
All
So,
right.
by the way, if you've put in an answer, I see also a B. If you've put in an answer, good on you. Don't feel bad if you get it wrong, because being able to commit to an answer is a core part of being able to move forward and learn from this. So, good for you. All right, go ahead and walk us through if you don't mind, Joe.
All right, no problem at all. All right, so we're kind of jumping right into it, and this is demonstrates one of the things that you really have to have down as a professional cloud architect, both for the exam and for the role. You need to know their services. And for those of you who just kind of opened up another tab and kind of Googled quickly some of these acronyms, no, 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 you will not be able to be doing that. So you really have to have it down, and this also kind of illustrates, as we start to go through, I'm going to just go through the answers top to bottom, and so evaluate them and give you my feedback on them. All right, so Secret Manager. Secret Manager is a service that allows you to share your passwords and variables and then use those variables in your application. Doesn't really have to do with encryption. It has to do with security, sure, but it's not having to do with encryption. So X is for a secret manager. Cloud HSM, Cloud Hardware Security Module. It's a hardware device, actually, that is housed in the uh, DSP infrastructure, and it does require an additional expense. This is not part of the standard service. So as we see here, one of the requirements here is that they don't want it to cost anything more. They say without additional expense. And one thing that I've noticed on a lot of Google questions is expense very often comes in as one of the um, factors that you have to consider. Here, it rules out Cloud HSM. Uh, Next up is CSEK. That stands for Customer Supplied Encryption Keys. And that, to my mind, seems like it would fulfill the what Liam needs to do here. So I'm going to tentatively go like, okay, that's a good possibility. Let's go on to the next one. Cloud EKM. That's external key management. And this uses keys from supported partners, external key management system partners. There are, I think, 4 of them now. And that, because you're working with an outside service, that violates that requirement from Liam's IT team. So that one goes out, and that leaves us with our answer, CSEK. So this kind of brings up some of the process that Mattias was talking about. You really want to read through the questions carefully. The first sentence there, Liam's company is excited to be migrating to Google Cloud. Well, hooray, aren't we all? That has nothing to do with what the question is really about, so you can quickly discard that. And then you need to go through and pick out the individual phrases and, as Mattias calls it, the kicker, looking for what is it that they're really looking for. So my main takeaway here is you really need to know your services, both the benefits and the limitations of those. Anything
Yeah,
to
I
add,
think
Matthias?
one thing that was called out, had I only known the acronyms, commenter on YouTube has pointed out, and that is absolutely true. That's exactly right, right? If you do understand all of the pieces, then making decisions about them is so much easier. And it's you can sometimes figure out what some of them mean based on the sort of experience that you've built up over time. So I definitely don't recommend that you try to create like flashcards just to memorize everything, like memorize certain words. It's really much more about understanding rather than memorizing. But when you do have that understanding, these things will connect with a part of your brain where your mental model says, oh, it means this thing. And that's exactly that understanding where you can make decisions about it with understanding rather than it being in a different language. So don't feel bad at all. That's exactly right. That's the thing that you need to work on is getting that familiarity with the acronyms because they mean certain things in terms of services, and those services mean certain things to your architectures and your data flows, and that is how you move forward in making architectures. That's what a professional cloud architect does. Is it uses all of these tools to make and change architectures so that they can move the data flows or make the data flows and move the data around the way that the business needs the data to move. So yeah, so a number of people got this right. A few people didn't. Like I said before, don't feel bad if you didn't get it right. I think you've got a couple of extra comments
I
to add
do.
about this too, right, Joe? Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the
Okay.
other things that to help you with that familiarity, besides our courses, of course, are Google's own materials. And Google's has a number of white papers and best practice documents that you'll find throughout their documentation. This one here is a security white paper that encompasses all of these services and a couple more. It has a nice breakdown of it laid out on the syllabus, the table of contents there. Uh, Cloud KMS is covered. Cloud HSM is covered. Uh, the external key manager is covered there. And then also customer supplied encryption keys is available. And it has this really nice little chart down at the bottom that shows where everything fits, including customer supplied encryption keys is much more under the customer control. So you'll find a lot of these throughout Google's documentation, and it's been my personal experience that a number of questions come from these white papers and uh, especially the best practice docs. You think that's true, Matthias?
Definitely.
Have you seen that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Google actually does have quite good documentation about a lot of different things, and especially around a lot of these higher level best practices and all of that sort of stuff. And so there are a few core things that we generally refer to as we're going through making our courses and whatnot as well. But also, you'll come across them in times like this to go to this documentation page, for example. But in general, you really need to be sort of aware of how Google encourages you, recommends, really wants you to understand technology and how to use it effectively. They have a lot of people who have spent a lot of time figuring out a lot of different situations, a lot of tricks of the trade, and they've put them into these sorts of pages. So I definitely recommend following Joe's tip to, when possible, review Google Cloud white papers and best practices. They often contain exam related details. Yes, agreed. I guess I could
All
have said
right.
it just yes,
So
but
we're ready to
wouldn't have
move
the same
on
impact.
to our next question.
Yeah, I think so. That sounds like a good idea. So
Okay.
the 2 minutes starts
All right. And we're going.
now. 'Already got some answers coming in. 40 seconds left. Sorry, 40 seconds down. Oh, we have a minute left. 30 seconds left. We have a lot of consensus. so far, but is that correct? We'll have to see. 10 seconds left, and we have a brave soul who's venturing a different guess. Good for you. All right, our time is up, and not conforming to just whatever everyone else thinks is a good, important quality. But we also want to drive at the correct answer. So, Joe, do you want to walk us through how do you break this question down?
All right. So let's start by eliminating something that, for me, when I first look at the answer, is just jumps right out because I know that Google does not have a service called social. I'm sorry, my social
Social
AI.
AI.
Although I think that's a great name for a service, and I only want 4%. If they decide to go with it, I can be bought very simply. It's not a problem.
Just to
But
interject, someone else agreed that that was a good name for a service because they guessed that that might be the one, and that is a fair thing to do. If there were such a service, then that probably would do exactly what you want here. Unfortunately,
exactly
there is no such service, so we do need to eliminate it and keep moving on.
right. So now let's go back to top to bottom after eliminating the thing that jumped out at first. Vertex AI. So Vertex AI is Google's overall name for their GCP AI services. Well, at least it was when I came into this hour. I don't. Could somebody check and see if they changed the name again? I mean, it's entirely possible. Just kidding. They've really settled on Vertex AI this time. So
I'm
this is
sure.
a it would they could use Sean could use Vertex AI to do this. So it's a possible answer. It may not be the best answer, but it's a possible one. So let's just leave it as uh, check it off as a possibility in our head. The next one, Video Intelligence API, however, by itself is not going to work. It's really uh, that's for something to analyze your video and identify objects in it and a few other things. So we have to X that one off. Natural language API, that is definitely more about picking up sentiment from text and from language, from um, that's in documents. Uh, so it would be something that would be used for categorizing customer reactions. So, and that's a more specific choice than Vertex AI. So now um, we have to eliminate Vertex AI. And I do want to say that you could use Video Intelligence API in conjunction with Natural Language API, but that's a slightly different question. Sometimes that might be this question, but with another little twist, asking for two answers or something like that. Uh,
Y-
one of the things I
Yeah,
do
that's a
want to know, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you could make this question perfectly valid and say choose two answers. Um, so you would be forced to choose the second best in addition to the best tool. And so because of how we've gone through these, we've basically eliminated the social AI and the video intelligence API. So you would settle on natural language API and Vertex AI. Those would be your two answers if it said choose two. Because we said choose one, now you have to balance those two, and it becomes arguably a little bit harder in some ways than to because you need to know more about which of those two that could both do it is a better option. So yeah, so I think that's a valuable call out, Joe. Thanks for calling that out.
Yeah, and I do want to note that in this exam, there is definitely an increased focus on Google Cloud's AI platform, especially with regard to the available APIs, such as Natural Language API, Video Intelligence API, Vision API, and the Auto ML series as well. So you want to be sure to have those under your belt going into the exam.
Yeah, Google definitely wants you to be able to use the tools effectively. If you don't know how to use them effectively, then you aren't going to be able to propose good architectures for the people that you're working with, whether it's in in-house, or whether you're consulting for external clients, or whether it's your own project, or whatever the case may be. If you don't know about the tools, you can't do a good job using them, right? I mean, it's like a carpenter that doesn't understand that there is such a thing called a level, and they're constantly having troubles keeping their houses, straight. Well, maybe you should learn about those tools, and then you'll be able to do a better job. And that's the same sort of a thing as this here. So, did you have more things you wanted to add about that question, Joe? Or
No, I think we can just move on to the next tip, which
all right,
is that based on your knowledge, you can usually eliminate one or more answers that are incorrect. And this
definitely.
goes right into uh, Edgar or eliminate. Um, Matthias's uh, methodology here, and it fits right in.
Nice. Congrats to the people that got this answer correct. I see Anna NYC on Twitch, and on YouTube we had a bunch of people. Anand, Mani, Girish, Skojo 777, Justin Murphy, Happy Soul. There were a lot of good responses. And Yeah, so let's move on to the next question, I guess. Let's
Yep.
see what we've got for number three.
All right, here we go.
All right, time starts now. We're almost halfway through the time, but I don't see anyone putting any responses in yet. Hmm. Now we're getting something.
That Google engine finally kicked in.
I'm going to give a little tip. Remember, there are two answers required for this. I saw someone answer only one. Gotcha. Yeah. There you go. Squeaked in the second answer. Good, good. 20 seconds left. All right. Well, it seems like people are finding this a bit more challenging, took more time, seems like a bit fewer responses coming in. That is okay. It is important to understand that this is the type of thing that you might need to know about for a professional cloud architect exam. That's why when Joe wrote these questions, this was one of them, right? We can thank
Exactly
Joe
right. Exactly
for
right.
writing these questions. Um, Joe, do you want to walk us through this one?
Sure enough. So,
Thanks.
as going through this, there are definitely a number of key phrases that you want to hone in on. So, one of them is Riley is looking for ways to verify uh, the resiliency of the app. So, you need to know what resiliency of the app means. And resiliency is the ability to provide and maintain an acceptable level of service. If no matter what happens as far as faults and challenges to your regular operation. It's not really about avoiding failures. It's about responding to them, so that in such a way that there's not so much downtime or data loss, right? So the goal of this is resiliency is to return the service to fully functioning state after a failure return. occurs. It's the bouncing back, the rebound, really. Um, so you also need to know about service mesh. Need to understand um, what service mesh is and how it controls the various services that are involved with an application and how it helps them communicate, how it controls how they communicate, I should say. And then, of course, you need to know what fault injection is. And you have to know that what fault injection is all about, although I guess you could kind of maybe guess from the term itself. And basically, it's a type of testing that deliberately adds errors so you can see how well your app is set up to handle them. So let's go through the answers top to bottom. Network latency. Well, oh, I do also want to point out, as Mattias said down here, it's choose two answers. So that's something you'll encounter in the exam itself. It always will tell you if you need to choose multiple answers. If not, you have to choose a single one. And one other thing, if you're marking your items and moving on, you have to actually mark however many answers it says to do if it's more than one. If it's only one, you don't have to mark anything. But if it is two, you have to mark two or it won't let you go ahead. All right, so sorry, let's get back to the answers. Network latency. Um, Now, network latency, we're looking for um, disastrous issues, something like that. It may not strike you as that, but uh, enough network latency is a real problem, especially to the users. So you can emulate network latency um, using uh, fault injection. So for me, that's one of the answers. Um, let's move on to the next one. Invalid SSL certificates. I kind of jumped the gun and hit the X on that one, but this doesn't have to really do with the resiliency of the app. I think. Um, Next up is
And
memory leaks. Go ahead. You had something?
oh, I was just going to say, for what it's worth, we got responses coming in that were A's, C's, and D's. So at the moment, the responses that people gave us look very much like your elimination. You were like, yeah, not that one.
Okay.
But let's see how things
Okay.
fall out with the rest of
Uh,
them, huh?
all right. So memory leaks, fault injection cannot currently simulate a memory leak as that's within the app and not really between processes. I guess that's kind of arguable, but it's not really what Service Mesh does. Uh, so we can eliminate that one. So that leaves these two HTTP error codes, and you could move on once you've eliminated these. But you, one of the things that often happens is the one that you don't need to eliminate is one that's the most obvious. And if you're talking about resiliency, an HTTP error code might come to mind immediately, and you can configure your fault injection to simulate an abort a fault, which would result in an error code occurring. So these are definitely your answers here.
All right, so congratulations to Scojo777 and Happy Soul and Justin Murphy, who originally only had one but wound up with a second one because of our tip. So good for you all. You got the right answers. So that that is really good. So take a look at that and think, okay, so how can I use that to move forward? It means you should feel good about those things. But were there still any things that stood out to you? You were like, I wasn't entirely sure about this. Maybe I was, I should go and read something extra about that anyway. I've definitely done that myself, where even though I get the response correct, I would like to just double check some things to make sure that I understand them more fully, because the next question might be a little bit different for me. But also, I wanted to say for the people who are looking at C, the memory leaks, one of the things that you should think about is the data flow. When you're talking about a service that is brokering the connections,
Uh,
so Google's product is brokering the connections between all of the other services that you're running. How can you inject a memory leak into the thing that sits in the middle? And Google doesn't really have that visibility in to your memory space in your application. that's not really where that product sits. So for it to have a feature that reaches in and injects memory leaks, it's a harder sort of thing. So based not on memorizing how the product has certain features, but instead really trying to understand, well, what is this thing doing? How does it fit into an architecture? How can it affect the architecture that it's fitting into? Well, HTTP error codes really jump out as like, oh, well, it could say, hey, handle this, but then it returns another error because it's in between. So it's a part of that response. And latency as well. It could just hold on to something for a while and then push it out later to inject that extra latency, whether it's on the way in or whether it's on the response way out. So those sorts of things can definitely be in that service mesh. So that is, I think, an important way to think about products. They're not individual things. They're not black boxes. They are pieces of a puzzle that you put together, or Lego bricks in your architecture. So take a look at them that way. Hopefully that is helpful. If it is, let us know. If it's not, let us know too. But I think, Joe, you've also got an additional tip for us
I
in
do, and
terms of,
yep,
oh, go
and
ahead.
sorry for jumping the gun there a little bit.
No,
Yeah, so I think people's maybe hesitancy in answering this question kind of speaks to this. One of the things that is different between this exam and the previous one is there is a new emphasis on Anthos, bare metal, and VMware Engine. And it's something that you have to have under your belt in order to move forward with this. And it also kind of really illustrates where Google is in terms of how they regard the whole company migration. They're not a company that just says, "I'm sorry, you have to come. Everybody has to come onto the cloud per se and just be within Google Cloud Platform." No, they're open and in fact supportive of uh, doing hybrid cloud solutions or multi-cloud solutions, and that's where Anthos and bare metal and VMware Engine come into play.
definitely. All right. Well, just looking at the time, we should probably move on to the next question.
We are
And
ready.
all
Let's do
right.
it.
Well, let's start that now. So, 'We've definitely got a number of answers already coming in. Good, good. Got a minute left. For something like this, the extra time probably isn't going to help you a ton. 30 seconds. For those of you who put your responses in early, that means you bank time for the other questions that you would be getting during the rest of your exam and bank a little time for review at the end. So that's good too. Last chance to put your answers in. All right. It was another choose two. I see a lot of answers coming in. Good, good, good.
All
That
right.
is a part of the way to break it down. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. So this is also typical of a type of Google question or a question that you'll see on the Google Cloud Platform exam certifications. This one does not have anything to do specifically with Google. And it's also representative because while a good portion of the questions are scenario based. Not all of them are. Some of them are just straightforward questions. I think they're in the minority, but there are there. Anyway, let's work through the answers here. I'm sure many of you know this just off the top of your head, as you should. So layer one is the physical layer and doesn't work with load balancers. Layer two is the data link connecting the Ethernet and fiber channels. Again, not a good candidate for a load balancer. Layer three is a network layer, which controls the operations of the subnet. No load balancer here. Layer four, however, is a real possibility. This is the transport layer and works with TCP and UDP protocols. So definitely a load balancer candidate. We'll leave that one open. Layer five, nope. This one is for handling session duties, establishing and breaking network connections for APIs and the like. All right, two more to go. Layer six, presentation layer. That sounds promising, right? But you need to understand that it really deals with encryption and decryption and any necessary conversions. So not something that can be load balanced. And that leaves us with layer seven, and then this thing jumped for me. The two answers are layer four and layer seven. And layer seven is the application layer used by HTTP, just to round that out, which is definitely a load balancing rich environment.
Yeah. There have been a lot of different answers that people put in, but a number of people did get layer four and layer seven, D and G. So congrats to you. I wanted to also answer the question. Someone was asking or commenting. I haven't seen any of these in the practice exam on A Cloud Guru, and that is because the practice exam has just gone live, I believe, recently. Has
That's
it
right.
not, Joe?
That's
Yeah.
right.
So
Last
you need to take another look. Look, it's there. Haha.
And one thing I do want to note about the practice exam now, we actually have two practice exams. So you can run through one, and then once you feel confident about that one, see how you do, go through the other one. A little heads up, some of the questions are similar, and that is intentional because it means that you really have to read the question carefully to find the correct answer. So the exam tip from this one is there are questions pertaining to overall cloud technology and not GCP specific. So be on the lookout for that.
Important. All right, well, we should probably move on to our last question. We got
Our
five
last
minutes
question.
left, but it's a quick
Perfect.
question. I'm sure it'll be
It's
fine. So let's just jump right in.
nah. Okay. Two
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah. 30 seconds in, you should probably understand what's going on in these in this question, right? Yeah, looking through the case study. Yep. So, looking through the case study, we have a minute left. Do you feel like, for those of you who haven't looked at the case study, have you found it yet? Have you started looking at it, reading it, understanding it? This is not trivial, is it? In 2 minutes. Well, we have 30 seconds left in this 2 minutes that we give you for the question. Oh, we do have some answers, though, both Twitch and YouTube. All right, our time is up. Now, before we jump into the actual explanation of the question, I think it's really important to understand that this is about a case study, right? And it mentions that, and you will be able to refer to the case study in the exam, but if you haven't already done some digging into this particular case study, you're going to have a hard time in this exam. Joe, do you want to take it from there? Do you want to give us some more
Sure.
info?
Yeah. So I do want to point out that case studies are a major part of the exam. There are actually, from all of the evidence that I've seen in my experience, there are 12 questions that are case study related. Typically, it's two different case studies. One has 7 questions, the other one has 5. That is 25% of the 50 questions, and you will not pass the exam if you do not know the case studies. So let's go through this specifically. So if you were familiar with the Mount Kirk Games case study, you would know that the technical requirements that are listed include using GPU processing to render graphics, right? While the business requirements note that they really stress minimizing costs. So you're trying to balance those two. So first one, create a series of GKE clusters with GPU node pools. GKE clusters are a lot more expensive than the other options that you see here, spot VMs. So we can eliminate the first one. Next up, create a series of spot VMs with standard node pools. Standard node pools won't fulfill the technical requirements of using GPU processing to render the graphics. So that one's out. Um, Next up, create a series of spot VMs with TPU node pools. Wow, that sounds fascinating, but there are no such things as TPU node pools yet. They're not currently available. So, and also, those would probably just be through the roof cost-wise. So that's probably X, which leaves us with the final one, create a series of spot VMs. Spot VMs, by the way, are the successors to preemptible VMs. Um, Create a series of those with GPU node pools. And there we go. So that's your final answer.
Well, I think Happy Soul deserves some props there. It seems that Happy Soul was not only looking through the case study, but managed to answer it correctly in the time. But the key takeaway really is what Joe has already called out. That you need to know these case studies, right? Sorry to steal your thunder here on that particular tip, Joe, but
No,
that's
no.
really is the key thing. So you need to know those case studies, and Joe already mentioned they account for a quarter of the exam. And you really do not want to be wasting your exam time going through case studies trying to figure it out. And that's why it's really important to study them in advance. So, yeah, so did you have anything else you wanted to add about that, Joe?
Nope. I think that that covers it completely, and we've stressed that enough. And in the course, I do have an entire section devoted to the various case studies because they are so important. All right, let's. We have a couple more tips. I think we kind of already covered this one, where it's possible that answers. Oh, we didn't mention this one. This is a slightly different one. It's possible that the answers to one question can help you answer another question. Uh, Matthias, have you encountered that in your experience?
Oh, I've definitely encountered that in the Google exams. You can come back to questions, and so sometimes if something is stated in the scenario, it's true. Whereas if something is stated in the response options, it's questionable. But if something says, such and such a company is using the such and such a Google Cloud product to do such and such, well, oh, apparently that product can do that particular thing. And if you were uncertain, or you're like, was that what it was called, or whatever, then you can use that information, go back to something that you might have flagged, and be like, oh yeah, no, this is the right response over here, and so then you can do that. But in general, you don't want to try and rely on that. But it's a useful thing to consider, that you can go back to questions. So um,
And
I
it's a
see
good
that.
reason to, I was just
Yeah,
going
go
to
ahead.
say, it's also a good reason to mark a question for review. There's no reason not to do that. I mean, if you just are even a little bit iffy about something, go ahead and mark it.
Yeah. Definitely. I mark a lot of the questions as I go through, and I sometimes get a chance to go through most of them at the end, but I sometimes just don't have enough time to go through everyone, which is one of the reasons why it's so important to always put your best guess even before you mark it and move on. Don't ever mark something and just leave it blank. Just put something because you don't get negative marks for that. So I see that there are some people that have appreciated the stuff we've gone through. And we're really happy to hear that. If someone's asking when the next live stream will be, and I don't know if we've got that one planned yet, but we're always interested to hear your feedback of whether you were interested to come to more of these, what topics you'd like us to cover, and all that sort of stuff. Is there something more that you wanted to come back to, Joe?
Well, actually, to move forward. So we have just opened up a study group in our Discord channel, and you can find it at GCP-PCA. Uh, and we definitely welcome you there, and I look forward to seeing you there and having your questions um, pop up, and I'll be able to answer those there, and as well as in the discussion forums that are part of the course. And here's our structured question breakdown one more time so that you can take another gander at that. And remember that Uncle Edgar eats carrots vaingloriously, valiantly, voluminously. I don't remember. One of those. One of those.
We're still looking for better mnemonics, so feel free to let us know if you've got something better than Uncle Edgar. No shade, Joe. I
That's,
appreciate
that's,
your work on that, but
that's okay.
yep.
That's good.
So anyway,
And
yeah.
I'll just close with here's my LinkedIn address. Feel free to drop me a line or connect. I'd love to follow what you're doing, and hope you'll follow me. And a little tip of the hat to Frank Lloyd Wright here, who's been providing our imagery throughout these slides. He's quite a fella.
Indeed, and I know you harken back to a lot of his work and principles in your course, which is a really great way to do it. I definitely want to recommend again that you check out Joe's course. Also, check out Broadus's course for ACE if you haven't already got that ACE foundation in your toolkit. And also, of course, like I just mentioned, Joe's professional cloud architect course. So check them out. We've probably got some more links that'll be attached to these videos and whatnot. And oh, thanks to our wonderful moderators, Mel and Diane have been doing a bunch of work to get this stuff all going, and Wayne, our director. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This cannot happen without awesome people like them. So I want to thank them, and I'm sure you all do as well. So there were a couple of other questions as we went, things like how to choose between different service options, or how to jump into learning GCP if you have a background in AWS, and all of those sorts of things. Those are definitely things that I think would be well served by talking on that Discord channel that we just had up. It is a great resource. There are people there that can answer a lot of those more specifically. They're not really exactly the focus of this live stream today, but we do care about those questions. We care about your questions, and we want to make sure that you're getting the answers that you need. But we've already run a little bit over time on our live stream as well. But I just want to say one last time thank you to all of you for coming, because that's why we do this. So we're really glad to hear that you've gotten some value out of this, that it was a good drill, and that's awesome. Good to hear it. Yeah, well, from all of us at A Cloud Guru, I think that's it. So keep being awesome, Cloud Gurus.
Thanks, everybody. Take
Glad to
care.
do it, Joe. Keep